Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Let's Talk Assassin's Creed, your number one podcast for all things Assassin's Creed. Today's episode is going to be a unique one. We're going to be looking, instead of the original plan, which we've delayed for now, we're looking at how Assassin's Creed became successful. Now, as you all know, Assassin's Creed spanned quite a long time. It first started in 2007, and now in 2020, we're on the 12th installment of the series. So 12 games later, and we've got a massive franchise that spans books, comics, games, and hopefully, if it all goes to plan, doesn't get cancelled, a Netflix TV show. And now, with all this new stuff coming out and transmedia being affected, how did it succeed? What makes Assassin's Creed so special and so unique that it blew up? Because when you read how the game came into life, it doesn't look like a game that should have succeeded. And I know as a fan of the series, it's kind of awkward to say it shouldn't have succeeded, but on paper it was dismissed out of hand and had to be adapted to something new. And I believe it's that adaptation that's kept this series surviving for so long. Now, I did reach out to a few friends on the Assassin's Creed UK Facebook group, and I asked them what their thoughts were and, why they thought it succeeded. So we will be looking at them later on, a couple of points I found, so I'll be pulling them soon. So to look at succession, let's go back to the beginning. How did Assassin's Creed start? So, back in early years of 2001-2002, Prince of Persia: Sands of Time was released. This was a really big hit for Ubisoft because it blended a hack-and-slash style RPG with puzzles, parkour, and a really nifty mechanic of bending time. And this game sold really well. It's one of my favourite games, and it's the secret to why I got into Assassin's Creed. But the team that worked on it decided to go out and adventure on a spin-off called Prince of Persia: Assassins. This game would have been set in Jerusalem, and by 2003 it was pitched to Ubisoft, and they weren't so keen on the idea because it didn't kind of fit in with Prince of Persia. So they went back to the drawing board and they used all the ideas, the original inception of how they used the book of the Hidden Ones, I can't remember its name, but the inspiration they used for Prince of Persia: Assassins just carried over for Assassin's Creed. The premise is different because the rumour was that Prince of Persia: Assassins was going to be a co-op game where you played an assassin rescuing a prince with abilities. Though that's completely different to what we got. But when we got Assassin's Creed 1, we were treated as something fantastic. It reminded you of Prince of Persia with the way that the world was built for parkour and free running, and you kind of got that, but the combat, in my opinion, was dulled down. It could hack and slash, but it felt empty. The best bet was really cinematical and enjoyable counters that I remember playing through Assassin's Creed 1 and 2 I loved, but by Black Flag I was kind of getting bored of just being able to mash counter attack. But the cutscenes behind them were fantastic. But what made it also intriguing is a lot of games give you one narrative, essentially, or they give you a narrative and a few subplots that you follow and you piece together. But Assassin's Creed from the get-go gave you a past. It taught you about the Assassins with the Templars, with a backdrop of real history that a lot of people would have perked up to. It's like, oh, this is interesting. If I Google this era and time, I'm going to find something interesting because it really happened. This is just, it's not a dystopian past, it's not a parallel past, it's an identical past to our own, just their own flair. And a lot of people enjoyed that, including me. And then you would leave the Animus, and you'll have this modern day storyline about the Templars, which you don't really know about till you get in the game, and your brain's processing two interweaving storylines, and it's so well done that you finish the game and you want more. And then they released Assassin's Creed 2, and this is where we kind of see Ubisoft show its strength. Assassin's Creed 2 then took everything Assassin's Creed 1 was good and just blew it up and made it better. They realised that Altair not being able to swim was a hindrance on map ability. If your character can't swim, then you are limited to what maps you can do. They could never have done Florence. They could never have done the Black Flag. If the assassin can't swim, how can he be a pirate? Unity would have been difficult with the river running through Paris. The Thames, you couldn't explore the Thames. The list goes on. So they knew this was a weakness, and they fixed it, and your character could swim. They also dabbled a bit in the RPG. You know, you had the villa, you had the cloaks, and you had the gear upgrades for your health. And this was like a tiny bit of an RPG mix, but it was still a stealth linear game that was kind of restrictive and locked, but it was really fun. And then as it continued that trilogy, you would expect at this point that a game series would just keep it the same. They found a groove that worked, it was playable, the story was excellent. But no, the third game in their entry was surprisingly different. It used the mechanics of the old, yes, but it introduced new stuff. It added more. It was as if Ubisoft realised that they're not content with the game being as it is. They're always going to change it. Now, change does come at a price. Over the years, Assassin's Creed has lost what it was to become something different. Now, this isn't a bad thing. This has actually helped boom success. Because by the time you got to Unity, you kind of had this whole sense that the world was just linear. You had to do everything. You couldn't be the assassin you wanted to be. You couldn't be free. But then Unity was kind of like, well, what if we give them a full world they could explore? This is the first open world Assassin's Creed with no memory locks. You could just go out, do what you want, do side quests. They increased the RPG a tiny bit more with like very little skills, little armor upgrades, and they had a co-op, which is kind of good. I do enjoy it, but it was buggy, so I do think it did affect sales because of the bugs. But its premise kept its popularity because this was so different and new that you could just play it and you'd still feel like you're playing an Assassin's Creed game, but it's different. Now, the biggest boom of success for Assassin's Creed came in the form of Origins, which is quite surprising, but when you look at the sales, and I've talked to a few friends, Origins kind of stopped being Assassin's Creed and became Assassin's Creed 2.0. Essentially, it saw that RPG was working, it saw people was enjoying an open world that you could explore, and they made it bigger. They give you a different story instead of the same old Assassins vs Templars. They give you something new, something intriguing, something more balanced in the lore, and more people played it. More people dived in, they experienced it, and I've had friends who've picked it up, they've played it, and they've gone, you know what, I want to see what this is all about. I want to know why you enjoy it so much. And they've gone back to the start, back to Assassin's Creed 1, a very basic 360 game. No offense, it is a great game, but it was a basic 360 game, to a PS4 game that they've just started, and they've loved it. I've had friends who've done that, and they've played it. And that shows the popularity Assassin's Creed has. It's so gripping with its narrative, its design, and its ability to constantly change and adapt that more people will experience one game and decide to then try the others. And over time, the sales for the old games will increase because people are wanting to explore the past. As of 2020, Assassin's Creed broke its personal record. It outsold and became number one above Call of Duty. Now, Call of Duty is a yearly type of game that's always popular, and Assassin's Creed has beat it. And why? Well, because it's different. It's essentially, it gives people a game where they could be something different. They could be a Viking, they could explain a very popular history and time. They could live out their own popular Viking fantasy, but it kept a lot of Assassin's Creed details, and it's not perfect in areas, but it does have some phenomenal storytelling and some phenomenal nods back to old Assassin's Creed that people are playing it and enjoying it, and this is just proving how popular it is. If Assassin's Creed stayed as one all the way through and kept as a linear blocked game, the success would never have happened. It may never have sold as much. It's probably the better way to put it. But its ability to keep changing, keep evolving, keep ideas fresh and full of trends, which is why I think one day they may include a bigger multiplayer. They may include I doubt to say this, but they may include a MMO version. I sincerely doubt it, or a live service game like they've done with The Division. I doubt they could do that, but that shows the popularity Assassin's Creed had. There would be a fan base out there who would play a spin-off that is live service. There is a fan base out there who, like me, would play Orlog, which was that spin-off game in Valhalla. But that still carries the Assassin's Creed brand. So, I may be going off a tangent. I'm showing how popular Assassin's Creed is. So, let's go back and let's look over why it succeeded. So we can see now that Assassin's Creed is always changing and always evolving, and it's popular. But what is the biggest hook? And I believe the biggest hook is history. When you play a game, you're always greeted with a new world, a new tale, but very few games decide to take history and just run with it. And Assassin's Creed has done that a lot better than I've seen some other games, because you play in history and you can go back and you know what, that actually happened. There's old memes of people saying that they went on a school trip, they got lost and they lost a map, but their friend led them to a certain landmark because they played Assassin's Creed. It's mad to say that, but a lot of people love history. And what's more cooler than seeing your historical figures trapped in a war against a really powerful foe called the Templars and a shady business called the Assassins? What's more interesting? Queen Victoria talking to Evie and Jacob. That was cool. People like them historical figures and they come in for the history. But the other way it succeeded, in my opinion, is the world design itself. The way as Ubisoft has been able to replicate the places that you visit is phenomenal. Egypt in Origins does feel barren and isolated in certain areas, but other areas feel lifeful and joyful. In Valhalla, you get that sense of Viking life, Viking enjoyment, essentially. Enjoyment's a weird word, but how a Viking lived and enjoyed life. You get that feeling, and that immersion through history that people are coming to at times. A lot of people have come for the really deep lore that's embedded, and it's kind of hard to follow lore when you have to go through so many loopholes through comics, books, and that's why I now carry the Essential Guide with me, because I've missed a lot of comics. But that proves that people are coming back to the lore for the history, and it's ever-changing momentum. Assassin's Creed one day will reach a point where it's tried every trick in the book, but it'll always remain popular because it's willing to find the flaws and listen. In a recent interview for Valhalla, they talked about the post-launch content, and they did say that they're listening to the fan base. They're changing Valhalla with quality of life because they want to listen to the fan base. And this also helps with how Assassin's Creed is succeeding. They listen. Sometimes, very famously, fans requested for ages, we want feudal Japan and a Egyptian game. I can't remember the time frame it was suggested, and Ubisoft did say they're boring, they're not going to do it, but then they did Origins. And a lot of fans who may be like, well, you know what, played Unity, I'm not really interested in Syndicate, and then, ooh, there's an Egyptian game, something I've wanted for ages. So they go and buy it, and they tell the friends enjoy it, they go back and they play more. It's just this cycle repeated of word of mouth and something new that people could enjoy. And this whole package just led to its succession. It succeeded because, one, it can change, two, they're willing to listen, and three, the fans just keep coming back and talking about it. And I think one of the biggest changes, and I'll read the quote. Where is it at? There's a quote of the Assassin's Creed UK Facebook group that stood out for me for this point, and it says the greatest advantage for me as a gamer is that the stories/games are both interconnected and yet work as standalone stories. I can roughly play them in any order, dropping myself into historical settings of my choosing. That is a great way for a game to succeed. If you are forcing people to continue a narrative, some people may get burnt out. But a lot of people I've heard have jumped into Odyssey and read on Wikipedia and everything to catch up, and they don't feel like they've lost too much. And that's going to help the game succeed, because then people don't feel like they're losing too much. They feel like they can continue and jump in whenever they want and still find a place or a home or an internet web page or YouTube to learn more about the lore. The person continued to say that one of the things that has helped Assassin's Creed is its ability to innovate. I'm dyslexic, so I'm terrible at reading quotes, so I apologise. Has been its ability to innovate. Unlike some gaming series, it's played around with protagonists and very correctly, sticking with Ezio metaphorically striking while iron was hot, yet moving on before it became stale. Altering the setting and changing up the gameplay in the latest three in order to stay current, which is exactly what I was saying at the start. This is a series that is willing to change and adapt. RPG is a very popular saying at the moment, and maybe Assassin's Creed still has time to find the balance, but to stay popular, they follow the trend. This can be both a hindrance and a plus for some companies, and for Assassin's Creed, it's always proven to be a plus. The quote about Ezio is, I kind of agree. Ezio was a great character, and giving him 3 games was perfect, but if they tried to drag it past Revelation, I don't think he would have hit home as hard. So cancelling after Revelation and starting a new protagonist give the story a new life, a new taste, and new direction for people to follow, and I think people love that. Stuart Duncan, that quote was sent to me by David Gwynn on the Assassin's Creed Facebook. I promise to quote everyone, so it's fair, and I kind of realised my phone cropped the name out, so I apologise to him. Stuart Duncan has said to me that he loves how they are able to blend real-life historical people and events and fictional elements into a series of great games. Ubisoft has been clever with getting you to invest in characters, where it's Cassandra Alexos through to Desmond and Miles and Layla Hassan in the current time frame. And that is another great thing that I failed to touch on at the start, but it's the characters as well. A lot of people invest in them. I've probably been playing since 2007, and I've spent so many hours playing the games that I feel like if they were real life people, I could be friends with them and talk to them. It's a weird thing to say, but you get invested in the game, and you get that invested in the character, and especially with Desmond Miles, people got invested from the start. They want to see what he's going to do next. What happens now? Where's it going? And every time there was a fork in the road, a cliffhanger, people got anticipated to see more. And sadly, when his arc ended, that popularity died down because they went down a route where they tried to cut down the modern day, which didn't work too well in my opinion, but they were still able to blend the historical and the Templar Assassin feud into something that people did enjoy, and I enjoyed a lot. So to sum it up, what would we say is the biggest reasons for why it succeeded? And it comes down to, I'm going to say 4 basic points. Ability to listen to fans. Sometimes they can't add everything, but it seems they try their hardest to listen to the fan and adapt wherever they need to. The ability to blend history and fiction into a complete package that everyone can enjoy. The ability to use what's going on in the current time frame and build around it. So if RPG is popular, try and build around it. If it's really popular for games to suddenly have cliffhangers, I'm pretty sure they'll start building around it. But also at the same time, it's the ability to adapt. If they know that something's not working, they're not going to do it. And I think that's really cool to hear that they're not going to do something if it doesn't work. Or they'll do something once, see if it works, and if they do, they fix it. And the last one is the most crucial part that I think is the reason why we all get hooked and why it's succeeding, is its storytelling and lore. The world and universe Assassin's Creed built up is so in-depth, so vibrant, so full of mysteries. You couldn't just pick up one game, read it and think, I've done it all, there's not mystery left. Even, I'm going to say 13 years later, if my time is right, I still think there's more mysteries in Assassin's Creed universe to discover. I'm halfway through Valhalla, and from all my friends who've been giving me spoiler-free reactions, I'm pretty sure my draw's going to be hitting the floor at some point. And I'm pretty excited for that, if I'm honest. So, there we have it. This is why I believe Assassin's Creed succeeded. They listen, they adapt, they improve, they give us great story and great lore. And I'm hoping that they just keep doing this. I hope they don't falter, I hope they don't waver, and I hope that they learn when's best to stop adapting. Because I feel like Valhalla has hit this wall where, I've said it in the past, they have perfectly found the perfect balance. They just need, tweaking with the AI. I think if we're not going to get vertical worlds and cities, there needs to be more environmental parkour. Parkour is a fundamental part of Assassin's Creed, and it's there in Valhalla, and I don't think we'll get Unity's Valhalla back, but increasing the environment to do parkour is going to be nifty, because Valhalla doesn't have a lot of environments for parkour, and I miss that. But they have things to tweak, and I just think Valhalla is perfect. There's a lot of references to AC1 quest structure. It feels like Assassin's Creed game with assassinations, and it kind of helps a lot with making the game feel like Assassin's Creed, but keeping it RPG, which is a good direction for them to travel in. At the moment, things may change in the future. So, thank you all for listening, and if you have any topics you'd like to suggest or you want to become a guest on the show, then please reach out to me on Twitter at ACLetsTalk or email me at Assassin'sCreedLetsTalk@gmail.com. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you all next week.